After a few weeks off, we are back with the Fedora Podcast. Welcome back. My name is Noah Chalai. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you, along with Noel. Welcome in, man.
Hey, how's it going, Noah? It's been a bit.
It's been a hot minute. So since the last time we've had the Fedora Podcast, a couple of things have happened. First of all, Red Hat Summit has been upon us, and we've had the opportunity to go there, and we got to meet up in person. We got to hang out. We got to meet the new Fedora lead, which is pretty cool. And also since that time, you've had the opportunity to go to Flock. So I guess if you can, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about Flock and how that was for you?
Sure, yeah. Man, it was a really, really fun conference. I had an absolutely wonderful time. I would highly recommend anybody who is engaged in the Fedora community, and anybody who listens to this podcast obviously should very much consider going. It was really great opportunity to meet a lot of really cool people. I mean, obviously my favorite part of any conference I go to is the hallway track, and this conference was definitely full of that as well. So yeah, it's the second time I've ever been to Europe, so that was also a really exciting thing for me to be flying across the ocean. So that was definitely new. And then Prague, which was an absolutely wonderful location. I am very stoked for whoever picked that as the place that we were going to go. That was a really, really cool city with a lot of really great sights and a lot of awesome stuff that happened at the conference just outside the really good talks.
Did you get to do anything outside of Fedora proper?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely took some time to do some sightseeing, went and got some really, really good food. Czech food is definitely well known for their goulash. So goulash is kind of like this meat gravy or kind of beef stew kind of sauce, and then you had these like potato like bread dumplings. It's actually quite incredible. So if you ever get the chance to go to Prague, definitely try to get some goulash. And then of course, I always take the opportunity to survey the local beer scene, and so there was a lot of really good traditional Czech beer as well. So yeah,
I'm told that German/Czech beer is very different than American beer. True or false?
I mean, like, we have a really, really good microbrew scene where I'm based in Minnesota. So, like, I get a chance to try a lot of different types of beer. I would definitely say that Czech beer is known for their Pilsner beer. So if you're familiar with different types of beer, it's definitely a little bit more like if you compare it to like something like a Budweiser, like a Bud Light, or even a Bud, like it's, much, much thicker flavor, probably a bit more bitter than most people are used to. So, but yeah, I was really, really enjoying all of the really, really good beer over there for sure.
Every time I go to a conference, I try to come away with at least one thing. If you were to sum up one thing you came away from Flock with, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a really hard one. I mean, I think that open source and the Fedora community especially is probably one of the most welcoming communities that I've ever had the pleasure to be part of. And being someone that's so new to the community and not knowing like a ton of people, like getting the opportunity to meet a lot of the people who you see their nicknames and that sort of thing, that was really, really an amazing opportunity. And it just felt like a very welcoming place to be, especially with someone so new, and especially someone presenting on something that's not even part of proper Fedora, though we use Fedora, of course. So that always was kind of interesting too, because I got a great opportunity to be able to present with on Bazite with one of our maintainers named Antheus. So I will try to see if I can track down the I know that they're splitting up the clips at some point, but yeah, I can definitely try to track down the timestamp. But that was a really great opportunity as well.
That's very cool. And was the warm reception then to Bazite and the use of Fedora to achieve Bazite?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I got so many people asking questions about, how we're doing things, why we're doing things the way that we're doing. Just the amount of people that were interested in trying to help make gaming on Linux better and also helping Bazite, I think was just awesome. So yeah, really, really great opportunity to be able to go. And like, if you're also a person that doesn't like super large conferences, like with lots of people, this one is definitely one of those where I think is a lot easier, to not feel overwhelmed. I mean, especially with the way the conference was laid out and everything, that was really nice too.
That's awesome. So next year, do they know where it's going to be?
Not yet. There is a poll that for a couple of different options, which, funny enough, Prague, I think, was one of them again. But yeah, they are not sure. They usually figure it out, and I'm sure we'll bring it up at some point once it's all decided. But yeah, it'd be really awesome. Like last year, this last year it was in Prague, and then 2024 it was in Rochester, New York. So I know that they've been kind of going back and forth between America and Europe, just because for anybody who's traveling, it makes it easier on either side of the pond. So so I'm not exactly sure what the plans are, but hopefully it'll be in a cool city.
Hopefully it'll be in a cool city, and then in the US, maybe both you and I will hit it up next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great.
I want to take us back to Red Hat Summit. So Red Hat Summit, if you're not familiar with it, it is the annual Red Hat conference, and the idea there, so far as I understand it, is threefold. The first is it's an opportunity to get all the Red Hatters together in the same room at the same time, because that's where collaboration happens. The second thing is it's the opportunity for Red Hat to announce some of their newest products, their latest things. And then the third thing is it's an opportunity for Red Hat to bring their customers and their partners in. And so again, you get everybody under the same roof, and then that collaboration has happened. So both Noel and I were there. What was your takeaway from Summit?
Sure. Yeah, I think Summit for me again was different than when the first time I went to Summit, which was a couple of years ago at this point, when it was back in Boston again. Not the one in Denver, but the one previous to that year. And like the thing was for me is that I had a lot of different things that I had to do, whether it was trying to capture interviews for the podcasts or, meeting up with folks or, doing the hallway track and just meeting other people on my team that were there. I was also manning a booth for a little while, a couple of times, and getting the opportunity to talk to customers about what I do day to day, which is technical account management. And it really was just a way different conference than being an attendee, which basically just allows you to be able to go to sessions, talk with people, get to know. Like for me, I was on the other side where I was running sessions, so I ran a lab, or helped run a lab rather. And that was for image mode, which was one of the biggest announcements this year, which I mean, I've been working on upstream in Fedora as well as in Universal Blue and Bazite. So like for me to see that Red Hat is basically now like, all right, it's been cooked enough. It's been in the oven. It's had enough tests, and everything like that. It's good to go as a product. That for me is really, really exciting. So that was one of my biggest things from Summit was like, last time I went, it was technical preview. And then this time it's like, okay, this
Real
is
deal.
all people are talking about.
So for somebody who's joining us who hasn't heard of image mode before or hasn't been following along, what would you say the 30-second elevator pitch is?
Sure. So image mode for RHEL is built off of the bootable containers technology, which is the same technology that powers Bazite as well as CoreOS. So if you're familiar with the idea that certain parts of the operating system are not mutable, so they're non-changeable, that's basically the biggest benefit for it, is that you get those security benefits as well as the fact that because it's built using container technology, building a customized image is very, very easy. So image mode for RHEL is basically the supported version of what Fedora bootc has been doing upstream.
Very cool. And came out into production this year. Why do you think there was the excitement? Why do you think it was the buzz. What do you think the practical implications? If you're a customer, if you're somebody that uses Red Hat on a daily basis, what's the impact?
Yeah, I think for me, like one of the biggest wins for it is just it makes it easier to manage your infrastructure. So, depending on the type of workload, of course. So, like, obviously, if you need high uptime, like sorts of workloads and live kernel patching, then maybe this might not be the solution. But if you have things that are more like appliances or things that that need to stay in a particular state, or you just want to manage everything in a cloud native sort of way, using containers, image mode is kind of that in between sort of solution for folks. So a perfectly good example of that is some of the things that were shared. I believe it was by Salesforce, though I can't quite remember the client. So I probably just won't say, but like there was a client that basically stated that they had already in technical preview seen some huge benefits of running image mode in production. And basically what that allowed them to do is a lot of the container native, OpenShift Kubernetes types of workflows, they're getting their VM folks basically. So like the people who are used to doing things with VMware or anything else, they are basically getting an opportunity to be able to see what the benefits are of building things via containers. And so that's, I think, one of the really, really cool things about it is it's starting to bridge that gap between the developers and the sysadmin folks like us.
100%. The other thing is I feel like, the way we built applications yesterday, these big monolith apps, is just not the way people do it anymore, right? If you're a company and you're showing up, you're not doing that anymore. You're optimizing for cloud native. You're splitting up into microservices. And what's interesting to me is Red Hat has been at the forefront of that the entire time. And so as you go through year after year, it's been really fun to have like a front row seat as you're watching. Every year they come out, that technology moves a little bit further. And so we started by shoving all those monolith apps into virtual machines, and Red Hat was at the forefront with RHV and Red Hat virtualization, those sorts of things. And then as they started to go back out to containers, obviously OpenShift. Is it fair to say that OpenShift is the flagship product of Red Hat?
I would say it's definitely one of the flagship products of Red Hat from my purview. I mean, the fact that we optimize all of our stuff to run on it, we recommend it to customers for larger, enterprise container management. I mean, yeah, I would say it's a pretty important one for Red Hat.
I suppose asking the Ansible guy to say that a different part of the company has the flagship product, maybe a little bit, but so
yeah.
So no matter which one of those products, though, they all kind of seek to serve the same end. That is to say, Red Hat is going to be the company that's going to allow you to deploy your apps on Linux. However it is you want to do that, wherever it is you want to do that, using whatever tools that you want to do that, they have an option. And so you're watching as those really come into their own, and as things move more towards a container-based system, things like immutability, they all lead for a customer or a partner's ability to, leverage reproducibility, to leverage container management, to leverage high availability, to manage clustering, all those things, all those really cool corporate buzzword bingo things. It's really kind of come into its own, and now people are starting to see the value of it. What I thought was really interesting this year at Summit was, as that's kind of been happening, and if you've been paying attention, then you've been watching that happen. What I thought was really interesting, the move by Broadcom to buy out VMware and jack the price up, in some cases 1,000%. 1,000%. Can you imagine running a business and having a core part of your business, the price jacked up 1,000%? I can't even imagine. And so as they did that, Red Hat, who had previously pulled away from RHV and said, hey, we're going to move more towards containers and OpenShift and Kubernetes, looked over and went, you can't do that to people. Hey, you might be the 800-pound gorilla in the virtualization world, but we're a 750-foot-pound gorilla. Watch this. And so they took their virtualization system, libvirt, and they containerized it and said, boom, we're going to combine virtualization with containers, and Bob's your uncle. Now you've got the same high availability, all the things you want. And so if you're a company and you have this big, huge monolith app that you want to shove inside of a VM, Red Hat's going to help you do that with containers, so it runs on OpenShift as well. And so being able to kind of, they made that announcement this year that they were coming out with a specific version of OpenShift specifically for virtualization. And I watched and I went, oh, that's amazing. It's so amazing to watch Red Hat do that and for Red Hat to be the company to succeed in that space. I thought that was really cool.
Absolutely.
The other thing that happened at Red Hat Summit that both you and I got to take part in was we got to meet in person Jeff Spalletta. What'd you think?
Oh yeah, no, I got a chance to meet. Funny story about that actually. So I was walking into Red Hat Summit. I literally just got there, like physically, and a few weeks before, I think I had met Jeff. We actually have a weekly social hour for Fedora that's basically done for through Matrix. And so everybody joins in and it's a video call and everything like that. And you can kind of just talk about what's on your mind or whatever the case may be. And Jeff and Matthew Miller is usually there, and Jeff showed up for that call, and we just kind of chatted and stuff like that. And, you know, real quick, I mean, I think it was like literally one of his first days on the job, like physically, like just like being like, okay. And so I'm walking in and I get off the bus and I'm walking side by side next to a guy, and I didn't recognize him at first. And I was just like, oh, hey, how's it going? You know, my name's Noel, blah, blah, blah. We're talking stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, what's, you know, like how he's like, oh, well, I'm brand new to Red Hat. I just got here, you know, started a few weeks ago. I'm like, oh, wow, already at Summit. And, you know, you've been only with the company for a couple weeks, you know, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm the new Fedora project leader. I'm like, oh, yeah, that was embarrassing. We actually met a couple weeks ago, and I'm normally a lot better with faces, but the virtual to in person's a whole different animal too, you know? And so like, it was kind of funny that the first person I run into while we're walking in is actually a person I wanted to talk to or get an opportunity to talk to at Summit. And so we ended up chatting, you know, for a bit and stuff like that. And but yeah, that was pretty funny.
So if you haven't been following along, Jeff is an early contributor to the Fedora project, and he was elected to the Fedora board originally as a community representative at large. And then for a time being, he took a different career path. He went to Alaska and Antarctica. That was an interesting thing. You and I got a chance to sit down with him and just talking about the logistics of getting to Antarctica, working in Antarctica, trying to leave Antarctica, not being able to leave Antarctica because there aren't flights available. Just the whole thing I think is fascinating. And so he did that for a year to study aurora activity, which I thought was really interesting. And then he was involved in the early days of shaping Fedora and shaping things like the Fedora IRC channels and the mailing list and helping users get started with Fedora and all those sorts of things. And he took off for a little bit. And then when we were talking to him, he was explaining to us the timing. It was like all the stars aligned, all the things, because he came back, right about the time that Matthew Miller was starting to look at taking a step, I'm going to say a step up. One of the things that has consistently but one of the things that I've consistently noticed about Matthew Miller is that he is the kind of leader that you want to work for. He's the kind of boss you want to have. He's the kind of leader that everybody wants to see in a position, because he's not one of those people that jumps in and does everything himself. He's not one of those people that tells you no. He's not one of those people that does the go for this, go for that, go for this, go for that. He moves obstacles out of the way for the people below him so that they can succeed to their full potential. And so Matthew is getting to the point in his career where he's looking to move up and on. And as he is, so far as I understand the way this is going to lay out, and Noel, you correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew's new role will be above the Fedora manager. Is that?
It's like,
Fedora leader?
Yeah, the way that I understood it basically is Matthew is the manager, or like one of the important folks in the community Linux engineering, or like community Linux something. I can't quite remember exactly the position. And then, yeah, technically, if you talk about like the reporting structure, I do believe that Jeff does report to Matt, but also like Matthew is taking more of like a larger look at things. Like Jeff's day-to-day is going to be basically mostly 100% Fedora focus from what I understand. Matthew's kind of looking at it from like two different places, where he's looking at it from the Red Hat side as well as the, so more of like a 50-50 split from what I understand. But again, those guys can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's the way that I understood it.
Has the transition actually happened yet?
Yes. So the official, funny enough, I actually linked the FPL handoff YouTube video that they did. And if you want to see the new Fedora project leader in a hot dog costume for a brief moment,
this is wonderful.
That is a excellent video to watch. I actually got to see that in person. That was quite funny. Unfortunately, I feel like it was a bit of a cowardly move, Jeff, to be honest, if you're listening, that you didn't do the entire speech in the hot dog costume, but I'll let you off. I'll let it slide.
So I can't remember exactly how this conversation went, but at Red Hat Summit, we were talking with Jeff and we were joking that above all of his other responsibilities, the thing he should do is bring back the nicknames. And the answer we got back, and this is where my memory falters a little bit. I can't remember if it was Matthew Miller or Jeff that was saying this. It's actually the legal team. They're the ones that are holding this whole shebang up, right? Everybody in the community loves the nicknames. Everybody on the internet loves the nicknames. All the technical people love the nicknames. You know who doesn't like the nicknames? The lawyers. You know why? Because they don't make any sense to them and they have to go to defend them. And so what ends up happening is they're like, fine, you want nicknames? You can have nicknames. Here's a list of the 200 things that you're suggesting that you can't do for this reason, that reason. Here's the list of like 3 that are non-controversial, and you can go ahead and pick from those. And so we're hoping for nicknames to come back, but I don't know. We'll see.
I think my favorite thing I spotted, so I've been playing around a little bit with actually a new window manager called Neary that I heard about. And it's basically a tiling window manager, which is using some of the same back-end tech as Cosmic, which I thought was really interesting. The project's completely written in Rust. And I've been playing around with it. And what's funny is that I'm used to seeing the Bazite grub, loading screen that basically, shows the version of Bazite or whatever. And I haven't used Fedora for a bit. So I saw the splash screen for Fedora. And the funny thing that I saw is that there was a little nickname that got snuck in there, which said Adams. For the release version. I'm like, oh, that's good, because Douglas Adams for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy 42, it's actually perfect. So whoever snuck that in there, good on you. That was awesome.
You're going to have to pardon my ignorance a little bit, Noel. I'm struggling. My Google foo is letting me down. How do you spell Neary?
Niri.
Neary, window manager. What do you think of it?
I haven't had much of a chance to play around with it too much, but I've already started to mess around with it on my laptop, because I don't use my laptop quite as much as my desktop. And the horizontal tiling, the way that it functions in comparison to other tilers that I've used, I actually very much like this workflow, because it's basically an unlimited strip of real estate where I can just keep opening windows and like on the same workspace, and it will, as many of them as I want, full screen or half size or whatever the case may be. And I can just kind of scroll back and forth. And it also has one of the best overviews that I've ever seen, as far as like when you're looking at all of the windows on your desktop, and the way that you can drag and drop things with it is actually pretty incredible. I mean, so shout out to the developer who's been working on Neary, because I heard about it through Brody Robertson's channel, actually. And yeah, like I have not been like willing to experiment terribly much with tilers, just because like I don't know. I just got frustrated with the way that they functioned at some point, and just kind of gave up and just went to KDE. But like for me, I was looking at this one and I'm like, so yeah, I've been building a Universal Blue image based off of, using Neary as the desktop environment. And the trouble that I'm having with it is that most desktop environments, especially tiling window managers, require you to do a lot of manual labor to get all of the configurations the way that you want them. And so I've taken a lot of that and dumped it into my dots files. But like, if you install my image and out of the box stock, it's not going to be a good experience. So yeah, like I said, it's mostly just been playing around with it, just because like I wanted to see kind of what this tiling window manager was bringing to the bunch. And the funny thing is that it's Neri is packaged for Fedora, but as far as I know, there's no Neri spin. I feel like it's a fairly new project. Otherwise I feel like I would have heard of it by now, but yeah, slight little tangent there. It's just been fun to mess around with a tiling window manager again.
If you were sitting across from somebody on a bus and they said, "Why a tiling window manager?" So you said, it didn't really resonate with you, and you would constantly find the rough edges. Has that changed, or could you make the argument for a tiling window manager? And if you could, you were sitting across from somebody in a bus, how would you explain it to them?
I feel like the biggest trouble with tiling window managers is that they leave so much for the user to have to do themselves. And like, I feel like these days, like KDE and GNOME, like it or not, most of their defaults are fairly sane. And like most people can just use them or at least try to understand them a little bit more quickly. The issue, tiling window managers, in my opinion, are like learning how to use Vim. Like, it is a life-changing tool that can be really useful for doing things in a really effective way, but the learning curve is kind of like this. Like, it's like you're like, oh, I'm learning, oh god. how do I do anything to get more effective with this? And so like for me, tiling window managers really fit the personality of a certain type of person. Like if you like to tinker, if you like to do the things, like that'd be great. My dream, honestly, would be if I was going to build a tiling window manager for someone else to use, I would probably have to figure out how to smooth out a lot of the rough edges. Like give them just like basically a config that just looks really nice, is functional, has most of the things that people would need. And the binds are fairly easy and intuitive to be able to figure out. And I think that's the problem, is that like tiling window managers, they have no settings menu. Like you have to go into a config file to edit them. You have to save it, you have to make all these changes. So for me, it would be like, if I was ever going to try to turn a tiling window manager like into a product, like there is so many rough edges that would have to be, done. And like Cosmic, I think, funny enough, is probably going to be the closest thing to that.
And you know what? In no small part because there's an off button, right? So you can go into Cosmic and say, I'm going to use it just like I would expect to use any other desktop environment. It just has the option of hitting a button and then have auto tiling turned on, which to your point about GNOME and KDE having really awesome, insane defaults, let's be honest, not only do they have rational, insane defaults, they also have pretty decent tiling features in and of themselves. So if you wanted to get the benefits of tiling, you could probably get most of the way there with KDE or GNOME. Do we agree on that?
Oh, I would 100% agree. Yeah. I mean, I still think KDE and GNOME are like, I'm using KDE right now because I realized that I was missing an important package to try to do this on Neri. But like, it's one of those things where for me, it's kind of like, I think that tiling window managers are absolutely amazing when you have small screen real estate that you're trying to make efficient use of. So like for me, an example in that is like, I love tiling window managers on laptops or like single screen PCs or stuff that doesn't require multiple monitors. Like that for me works great.
100%. So if I was to, if somebody came up to me and said, Noah, make me the case for a tiling window manager, it would look like the following. If you want all of the buttons and all the switches and all the things, and you want them all there and you want to be able to explore them, go use a regular desktop environment, it's fine. Where I think tiling window managers come into their own is once you evolve past that in the computing sphere and you get to a place where you say, listen, my end goal, I don't care about the bells, I don't care about the whistles, I don't care here's what I want out of my computer. I want to turn it on. I want a reliable and solid kernel to interact with the hardware and make sure to support hardware as it comes out and be super reliable. Well, in there, I think we're all going to agree that's the Linux kernel. On top of that, I wish to have some sort of collection of operating system and tools that allow me to run software. Now, there's some room for choice. You could choose Red Hat, you could choose Fedora, you could choose one of the many other ones that are available on the open internet, but some sort of GNU/Linux distro. We get to that very last stage. what does it look like? How do I interact with it? Again, you want all the knobs and the features, and you want explorability, you want discoverability, go with GNOME or KDE. However,
right.
If you don't care about that, if I know I don't care about any of that. What I care about is the ability to launch an application, and I want to know that that application is just going to take over the display output, whatever it is I have available to me, in a logical and rational fashion, and allow me to interact with that as quickly and efficiently as possible. There's a tiling window manager. Because when I'm launching Firefox, my goal is just to run Firefox. My goal is not to run Firefox and have little applets running on the side and have little bars and widgets and things that, let's be honest, can crash, right? Can crash, can take the system down, can lock up, can use memory. I don't want any of that. And so if you've got a little bar at the bottom, it's great for explorability because the 7 times a day that you launch a new application, it's kind of nice to have an application menu to remind you what all the names are. But let's face it, we get to a point, especially for IT professionals that do this on a day-to-day basis, and I know what applications we want to run on the computer. And what I want from those applications are grab a little bit of memory, store some stuff to disk, output your display, and let me interact with my keyboard and mouse. Oh, by the way, if we're going to talk about the keyboard and the mouse, you know what the most efficient between those two are? The keyboard. You know why? I can't get rid of it. I'm going to input text on the keyboard. So there's no getting rid of the keyboard. If I can do less with the mouse, that's less hand context switching, right? My hands stay solid and I can just type away. And instead of having to move around and then go back and then move and then go back and then move and then go back, my hands stay on the keyboard. And I use the keyboard to say, I want to jump to your point about when you have limited screen real estate. If I have 1366 by 768, I can run one window at a time efficiently, right? And so if I have 10 workspaces, now I can run 10 windows at the same time, and I can switch between those windows. If you're one of those people that, okay, well, I've got my word processor open here, I've got my terminal open over there, and I've got my web browser open over there, and I need to bounce back between the few. I'm going to the web browser, I'm grabbing a line from a tutorial, I'm going back to the terminal and I'm pasting it in, or I'm editing a document in my document processor or my word processor and I'm going back to the internet for my source material, whatever it is, I can bounce between those activities. I can even get the activity so that my cursor or my keyboard or my mouse is all staying roughly in a relatively same position and I'm just bouncing back between those windows. Now you hand me a bunch of 4K monitors. Instead of having a 1366 by 768 display, now I've got 6 4K monitors. Well, guess what? That same tiling window manager is going to efficiently leverage that hardware layout as well. And so instead of having maybe 10 workspaces, maybe I've got 15 workspaces. And so I've got one for each one of those monitors, and I've still got my ones that I was using for my various different activities. And that workload, the same workload with the same key commands in the same process, with the same reliability and the same lack of crashing or other things to get in the way, now just sprawls out across 6 4K monitors, and I can get back to work. On those 4K monitors, now I can start to do things like, well, I can fit 4 windows to every one of those 6 monitors, and so I can take advantage of a lot more screen real estate. And so it becomes, as you said, the most efficient, effective way to take applications, get them running, and interact with them. And so I've not heard of Neri. No, this is the first I've heard of it, but looking at it, I can see why you like it. It looks like a really modern, I would say aesthetic window manager. A lot of them are really blocky. They're very basic because you're not really designed to interact with them, as you said. Neri looks like, it's got the little rounded Windows edges. It's got the little battery icon at the top. It's got a little Wi-Fi icon, those sorts of things that, I'm an i3 guy, so I'm using i3 blocks to handle that. But, same kind of concept. Yeah. It's all kind of built in.
Yeah, for me, I mean, the biggest challenge with Neri is basically, like any tiling window manager, is that it's not a complete experience. So you have to install a lot of like additional packages in order to be able to do certain things. Like one thing I've been running into, I got to figure out, is a pull kit issue where basically I'm having certain apps that are like, for example, Nautilus. I just picked a file manager because I was just like, whatever, I'll just pick something. And like, so I picked Nautilus, and one of the problems that I'm running into is that I click on a disk, for example, and it doesn't try to even ask me for my root password to try to mount it. It just is like, no, I can't. I'm like, okay. So there are rough edges. Like I said, like with all of these tiling window managers, the biggest problem that they have is basically they're not like a complete experience. And so like it's one of those challenges, and that's why I've been kind of enjoying it a little bit, is just like being like, well, the cool thing about building things using bootable container images is that it's really easy to rev and basically be like, okay, if something isn't working, I'll install a package. But like once I have all these configs and everything all packaged up, then I can basically give someone an experience out of the box that they can use. My current theory right now of what I have to do for a lot of like the user config file stuff is probably just throwing it in the skell. So like when the user is created, basically it will inherit and take all of those config files and throw them in there as defaults. And then if someone wants to change them or make them theirs or whatever, then they can go ahead and delete my config or they can do whatever. But at least they have something that's functional to start with out of the box. So like that's the biggest thing for me is like, because like if you on Fedora like install all of the necessary packages, there are still systemd services you need to enable in order for these packages to start up automatically. Like your notifications, for example, don't work unless you have a package for that. Waybar is actually an additional thing, which Waybar is the thing that's used inside of Fedora Sway. So like you're basically Frankensteining together a functional desktop. And like, so for me, it's one of those things I'm like experimenting with it and being like, I just want to have a really efficient developer kind of like tiling window manager workstation for me to just do work in that context. And then, you know, I think my rough plan basically right now, I know I'm kind of talking a lot about what I'm doing and not necessarily anything about Fedora, but like the thing is what I'm thinking about doing is basically having Bazzite be like specifically for just playing games rather than trying to merge both of them. Like it kind of makes it a little bit more for me, like context switching. Like when I'm done for the day and I'm done working, I want to log out of my work machine and just go play video games and not have any messages or anything like that coming through. You know, it would be ideal just for me to have that one thing. Mixing both of them, it just becomes a little bit too messy, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm fortunate that I have multiple disks in my desktop, so that's no issue there. And my laptop's not good enough to play video games anyway, so it's like, it's kind of like, okay, well, let's try this tiling window manager thing for a bit and see how it goes.
So. Your daily driver is what distro?
So my daily driver right now has just been Bazzite, a custom image version of Bazzite that I basically made. So I installed all the extra packages that I needed. Bazzite DX probably takes care of 90% of the stuff that I've included. But like, yeah. And then for this new experiment that I'm messing with, I'm basically taking the uBlue main image, which is basically the image that has no desktop environment, no additional other than like the small tweaks and things that the uBlue team has done in order to make it like easier to build these other things off of it. I'm basically taking the most base image we have and then basically installing Neri, installing all of these different services in order to basically build effectively what people would consider another distro, but I just consider it another image. So for me right now, like I'm building it all on GitHub, and like I said, a lot of the work that is being done for me, it's a very bare bones image right now. I'm trying to figure out how to best do some default configs so that I don't have to do so much post config when I'm done.
So your daily work driver is a custom image of Bazzite, and then I'm assuming you're using Bazzite on your personal machine for doing gaming at night when you say that you're gaming at night after work.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a couple of machines. So I've got my Steam Deck that has Bazzite installed on it. I have a home theater PC, which also has Bazzite, which everyone in the house uses for doing home media stuff and everything like that, as well as video games in front of the TV. And then I have my desktop now. I've got a SSD in there that has my custom version of Bazzite on it. And then I also have an additional disk in there that I did have for Windows and I haven't used in 3 or 4 months. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to use Windows again, I'm probably just going to reinstall it anyway because it's going to take forever to update. So
absolutely. Well, that's very cool. The data center. So in less than 2 weeks, Fedora project is going to move to our new data center. And so a bit about that. Hopefully end users aren't going to notice or be affected. The mirrorless, the docs, etc. It should all be up and working. Contributors, however, they should expect some of the applications and services to be down or at least not fully working on Monday the 30th and Tuesday the 1st. So Monday the 30th of June, Tuesday the 1st of July. Contributors at that point are advised to kind of hold their work and wait until later in the week. And please do not overwhelm the admins with problems. They're working. They're going to get it. We know there's going to be problems, so just be patient. Chillax. That's why we like Git, because it's decentralized and you can just work in your little hidey hole, and then we'll all get back together after the 1st. But please don't report problems or those sorts of things. Starting Wednesday the 2nd, everything goes to plan, knock on wood. Everything should be back up. They'll be in the new data center, and then they'll start fixing issues as reported. And so in the meantime, just please be patient and wait for a smooth transfer of all the doohickeys.
Yeah. And speaking of like other interesting things that I learned at Flock, like around infrastructure, there was definitely a lot of conversations happening about the Forgio move as well.
Ooh, I haven't heard about that. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So if you're a longtime Fedora contributor, you're probably aware of there's a couple of different Git repos that are used by Fedora internally. So there's one called Pagure or Pagure, which is basically used for any number of things. And then there's also the dist-git repo, which is also based on Pagure as well. And then I know that Fedora, like some of the Fedora ecosystem also uses GitLab. So there's like 3 or 4 different Git forges, which is kind of a lot of different ones. And so the idea is basically there's a project. If you've heard of the Git project, it's basically a self-hostable Git forge that actually had a fork that happened off of it because they changed their licensing, I believe, if I recall correctly. And so Forgio was born out of that project. And essentially the idea is that Forgio is a free and open source alternative to Git as well as GitHub or GitLab. And basically the idea there is essentially to have like a more modern kind of looking interface, built on newer tech and self-hostable. So Fedora basically has been in the process of trying to get folks to start using Forgio because of not having such disparate amounts of Git projects. And there was a really great conversation that was happening, which I wasn't able to stay for the whole thing because I was very tired. But, basically they were talking about like, what will it take for Forgio as a project to be able to do all the things that Fedora needs? Because Fedora is a long time project. So there's lots of things that they've customized with Pagure and other things to basically make it work the way that they want. So, but it's good to see because again, like it is really maybe not challenging, but it's like, okay, wait, which Fedora thing is on this one and where is this one going and how do I use this one? Dist-git is familiar to people who package. So, but yeah, it's one of those things that hopefully should simplify the ecosystem a little bit and have less things that the infrastructure folks are having to manage. So
very good. Do we know anything about Fedora? Or does that kind of do it for this week?
I'm trying to think if there's any other big announcements. I mean, we talked about Jeff. We talked about Dist-git and Forgio. I don't think so. I think, and I know we're kind of bumping up towards the top of the hour here. Actually, it is the top of the hour. So
look at us planning like bosses. We appreciate you joining us. Thanks a lot. We record every other week. There's a bit of a gap there just because it was Red Hat Summit, then it was Flock, then it was Self, and so there's just conference season. You got summer, you got winter, and you got conference season, and we were in conference season. But now we're winding down with conference season, so we're back. So not next week, the week after, we'll have another episode for you. We appreciate you joining us. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.